Before we jump into today's episode, I want to take a moment to give a shout out to my amazing Supercast subscribers. Your continued support means the world to me. As a Supercast member, you get exclusive access to the unfiltered, ad-free video versions of our Health Unchained interviews. Raw, real, and packed with insights. You're not just supporting the show, you're fueling the conversations at the cutting edge of healthcare and blockchain innovation. So thank you for being a vital part of this journey. If you're interested in joining, you can learn more about Supercast in the episode description.
Hi, I'm your host, Ray Dogum, and welcome to Health Unchained. On this show, I will be speaking with healthcare entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and executives who are using blockchain technologies to revolutionize healthcare. These innovators are building the distributed infrastructure and diverse communities required for a trusted, secure, and decentralized healthcare ecosystem. Enjoy the show.
What is blockchain?
Was ist Blockchain?
What is blockchain?
The doctor will see you now.
Remember, the Health Unchained podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and we are not providing any sort of legal, financial, or medical advice. Please do your own research and due diligence before making any important decisions related to these matters. And now, please enjoy episode 131 of Health Unchained.
Welcome to Health Unchained. Today's guest is the founder and CEO of Circular Protocol, a layer 1 blockchain which uses proof of reputation for its consensus mechanism. Massachusetts-based Circular is focused on helping its partners drive innovation in the healthcare and decentralized science space. Gianluca is a hands-on engineering executive and educator with a background in medical simulation research at Harvard, where he's known for leading innovation in AI, blockchain, and virtual reality. Gianluca De Novi, here he is in the flesh. How you doing today, boss?
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this conversation with you. Maybe we can give the audience just a brief background about yourself. You know, I said a few things, but I'm sure there's a lot more that you want to tell.
I'm just another boring guy. I'm Italian, moved here. Technically, I came in the United States in 2010 for a 6 months internship at Harvard at the end of my PhD, and I ended up not living anymore. I started working for the Harvard Medical School and Mass General Brigham. By training, I'm an electronics and computer scientist, and then a PhD in robotics and operational research.
Very interesting. So first question is, what pulled you into the healthcare space and merging healthcare with technologies specifically?
Well, that was just because I was late in life. So I've been always, passionate about technology. And since I was a little kid, I said, I want to be a scientist one day. And in particular, was very intrigued by robotics and automation. So during my master, I needed to pick a subject for my master degree thesis. At that time, I was going to work with Formula One Ferrari to work on a simulator. And there was a professor that I met. At that time, I was an expert in virtual reality simulation and physics simulation. So that's why I was going to work in that space. I met another professor, which I accepted to meet just to be polite, because he wanted to offer me another subject for a thesis. So I went, and this was the chief of the pediatric surgery at the hospital in Bologna, and I ended up attending a procedure to a 5-year-old girl, which had no hope to survive because she was a terminal patient for cancer. So I missed a few nights of sleep, and I've been thinking, I can do something better than just go work on cars. And here I am. I decided to steer my entire career. After the master's, I did my PhD. I applied the same skills at the beginning in simulation for virtual reality simulation of surgery and robotic surgery and I was an expert in haptic feedback.
That's amazing. Obviously, you've seen a lot of change throughout your career in technology and the advancements of AI and things like that. But what really sort of sparked your interest about blockchain, and when did it really happen?
Oh, let's say this. I come from the middle of nowhere, a very small town in the south of Italy. When I was a kid, that was like literally a third world place. But my dad always used to tell me when I was very young, if you want to become good, you have to go where good things are and where you can find the best ones in your field. So my mission was to do impactful things in the healthcare. When I decided that that was my path, I couldn't go back and become a doctor anymore. I was already an engineer. That's why I was late in life. So I decided, okay, I can be an engineer but work in the healthcare space. And my mission is try to do impactful things that can equalize access to healthcare. I tried to do this across several ventures, but during COVID, when they said they were going to fast track vaccines, I realized there was going to be a mess afterward because of, people get hurt with new vaccines. It's normal. But because of the circumstances, was going to become a nightmare from a compliance standpoint. Was looking at technologies for data integrity. Blockchain seemed to be the best solution, and I couldn't find one that was compliant with the healthcare regulation and suitable to work with governments. So I said, I'm the right guy in the right place at the right time. I invested my own money. I built the first version of Circular, then looked for investors, and that's how everything started.
So this was like 2020, 2021-ish timeframe?
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So let's get into Circular. So you have Circular Protocol and Circular Labs. Can you talk about the organization and how it's structured, just briefly?
Well, the organization has a headquarters in Switzerland, in Lugano, and the core technology for the network is being developed in Boston, Massachusetts. So the reason for this is that everything was born while the SEC was creating a lot of issues to Web3 projects. So that was at that time the wisest structure. But now all the technology is being developed here. And so we are most likely going to open one more facility in Dubai, considering that we are starting to work with their government, and one of their centers is one of the investors and shareholders of Circular.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know that area, Middle East area, is really proponents of emerging technologies right now. So we're seeing a lot of investment in that space, which is quite exciting, actually. I think there's a lot of leapfrogging happening in other parts of the world. Everyone knows the US has always been the leader in technology, but I feel like we've started slowing down a bit, and maybe other countries or other continents perhaps are able to implement some of these blockchain related technologies to help their nations grow, because they've been kind of left behind perhaps. So it'll be interesting to see all that.
Well, there is one thing to say. Blockchains, in my opinion, they're not a technology innovation. In my opinion, blockchains are a social innovation, a social revolution, because the base concept behind the blockchain is the decentralization. And the decentralization is a social thing. It's not a technological thing. So one day a guy, his name was Satoshi Nakamoto, explained with his white paper that was possible to build a decentralized system that could give freedom in exchanging digital assets. And the initial people that invested into that idea didn't invest for a pump and dump or for token or for a gain. They invested because they wanted a paradigm shift. They wanted to have that freedom. They wanted to have that new paradigm in the finance. So I'm doing the same bet. Is it possible to do the same thing in healthcare? Because until today, the trust in healthcare was based on the branding, on the perception. So I trust that the pharmaceutical company because I like the commercial, and I have a certain feeling. But after COVID-19, that model crumbled, and we know that doesn't work anymore. It's very hard to rebuild that trust, and I don't think it's going to be rebuilt at all. So perhaps the new paradigm is a trustless paradigm where instead I can rely on decentralization and the proper tools to trust the industry because I have the proper tools that allow me to verify that they're doing the right things.
Really well said. I agree. I think the concept of decentralized, not just decentralized science, but decentralizing everything is a social revolution. Bitcoin, although it was over 15 years ago now, we've seen the growth. It's been incredible to see the growth in this space. Nobody really knew anything, zero about blockchains 15 years ago. Actually, there were some things, there was research on blockchains, but there was no real implementation of it, and the common person didn't really know about it. Now, the idea of giving people the power to control their own data and giving people the power to share their data responsibly and dynamically, it's a game changer, because the way we do it with Facebook and Google is we basically let them control our data, and we have to trust that they're going to treat our data wisely. Every time we go on a browser, there's cookies that are tracking every movement that we do, every keystroke that we do. And I don't think that's the way it should be. I think you would agree, and many people would agree here.
So here is a governance problem. The problem is that if the governance is centralized, it's never going to be in your interest, in your best interest. It's going to be in the best interest of that central authority. So what is that you can bring back on your side? And but this is not only about ownership. Now, what we are describing here is ownership. So I own my own data. Eventually, I can monetize my own data, so I can be in control of that. But there is much more than that. Let's forget for a second the problem of ownership. In general, there are 4 pillars in decentralization. I say in science, but technically pretty much everywhere. One is obviously how I raise funds. I can raise funds in a controlled fashion through an institution, and that might introduce some biases in the way the business is going to develop. Then there is, of course, the ownership of the information. Then there is one more thing, which is the integrity of the information that is being exchanged. Because the integrity of that information is what determines how good the service I'm going to get out of that particular institution is going to be, because they can lie, they can manipulate data. So if I can assure the integrity, that is going to be determinant. And then finally, there is the censorship. A lot of discoveries, a lot of innovation don't even see the light today. Why? Because they are buried by interests. So you find a big corporation that finds a small company that can disrupt the market with a new innovation, but will disrupt their market. So they prefer to buy and shut it down. It happened. It will happen. So decentralization might ensure that we can have a faster progress avoiding certain things.
Again, well said. I think that really kind of summarizes the ability of decentralized technologies and how this is going to manifest itself over time. So totally agree. Let's talk about the platform itself and some of the functionality that you've already built into it, the capabilities of Circular. And also, can you dive into the utility of the CIRX token as well?
So again, the reason why I built Circular, I think it's clear. I had to build because I couldn't find a layer 1 blockchain that could be suitable for 2 things. One thing was the compliance with regulatory framework. The other, to work with governments. Let's say you want to use a blockchain for data integrity, for important government documents, okay? If you want to use any of the existing blockchains today, you will face a very important challenge, a government would, that the validation of their information sits outside of their country, because the majority of the consensus will sit outside of their country. So that means that the existing architectures are missing one important feature, which is the jurisdictionality. So I implemented my own layer 1, putting all these features in so that you can now do all the things that other blockchains can do. But as a main difference, on a same network, you can have multiple blockchains, which make these more efficient. You can fine-tune the level of privacy for different blockchains, from fully public to fully private and different shades in between. You can make that blockchain run on a fully global network or on a jurisdictional one. There are different features that make it very different from other layer 1s. Plus, there is also some deep-in features, such as decentralized computation, that you can perform through this network.
And how do you handle decentralized storage of the data? Is there a way that you do that? I know jurisdiction, you said, so a lot of countries require their citizens' data residing in a certain data center in their own country. So have you considered those potential issues?
Absolutely. So, well, first thing is that we need to clarify one concept. A blockchain is not a data storage solution. It is a very inefficient way to store data. That's why it's usually used only as a ledger. So you store small transactions, and in general, you have a parallel cloud just to accelerate searches, because if you want to make a search on a blockchain, that might take hours in some cases. It's a very inefficient way. So that being said, you can use storage in two ways. One is because the blockchain becomes too big, and at some point you might not be able to contain on a hard drive that blockchain, especially in a case like this where you have multiple blockchains. So it's not only one, so they can be multiple. And in that case, you might transform a node in a half node, which is a node that keeps only a certain amount of the chain available, and you dump the rest on a decentralized storage. Right now, we don't have a preferred decentralized storage solution. APFS can be a possibility, but technically we already have in the architecture a way to dump the data outside. We just have to connect to a preferred service, or we might ask the node holders, node operators to pick that service. Or as an alternative, we might just build our own at some point, which is not a bad idea. The data instead, the data that a government, an institution, a company can keep that data wherever they want, on a cloud, on a database, on a hard drive. On the blockchain, all we get is certificates of integrity.
I see. So any data that is stored on a traditional cloud server would be encrypted, and then you would be able to access that data via the certification you provide from the blockchain.
Story, let's say you have on a hard drive and you have contacts of very important people. I want to validate that you have the contacts of these important people, but you cannot show them to me. Because if you show them to me, you have to break the privacy. So you can extract a certificate from these contacts, and I can compare that certificate with one that you extracted a while ago and compare them. If they are the same, it means that you own that data. And it's valid data, the one that you store, even if I can't see it. In matter of fact, you are offering a public proof of a private data. As new numbers keep adding to your database, I can validate that that database is always being updated in an authorized fashion. So it's you, the one adding the phone numbers, it's you, the one adding the contacts, and not someone else you don't know. This was a terrible example, but a patient record will make the trick,
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. No worries. Can we talk about the proof of reputation consensus mechanism and how that is important for differentiating yourself?
So the initial problem was, which one is going to be the consensus for this blockchain? I can use proof of work, I can use proof of stake, but each one has a problem. And the problem, what is giving up on decentralization? Believe it or not, proof of work is not the most decentralized system, because not everybody can become a node operator. And if you become a node operator with a cheap device, you might end up not gaining anything, just wasting energy. Rarely someone gets to mint a block. Why? Because it's a competitive system, and only the most high performance validators, nodes, miners, will mint a block. So it's in fact creating hardware centralization. And the hardware centralization is obviously a financial centralization. More money you have to invest, and more probability you have to make money. So problem with proof of stake now is that, I don't have to burn all that energy. I don't have to have super powerful computers. But if I want to be a node operator, I have to stake $200,000. You crazy? Can you imagine a student in a dorm staking $200,000? Never going to happen. Can I find a consensus that addresses all the problems, not creating financial centralization and entry barriers, so that anyone can become a node operator, and make sure that that person can actually earn something, not lose money, lose energy? So that's where proof of reputation comes in. First of all, it doesn't require a lot of computation. The second thing, it does not require the staking of a high amount of token, but there is a small fee to get in. The small fee is just to avoid the 51% of tax. Otherwise, it would be totally free if it wasn't for that problem. Then, how does it disincentivize the node from acting in an improper way? Well, it's using, first of all, a reputation index, which is a number that goes between 0 and 1. And that number is multiplied by transaction fees and block rewards. So if the number is 1, you earn the full amount. If the number is 0.5, you earn half. So that number can oscillate and go up and down, but you are being punished, slashing your future earnings. So you're going to earn less until you regain that reputation. And then there is another interesting algorithm within the consensus, which is a decentralized random number generator, which makes sure that without having multiple passes between the nodes, all the nodes at some time, they can roll the dice, extract a random number, which is who's gone next in minting a block, and that number is the same for everybody.
Thank you for that. Can you explain the utility of the token itself in a little bit more detail as well?
Yeah, so the CIRCs is used to pay for transaction fees, the block rewards. It's also used for governance. So right now we don't have a voting system. We started implementing a voting smart contract, but we will also create a DApp that will allow members of this community to vote on different issues that we will be posting and make proposals for improvements, pretty much like all the other systems. So keeping in mind that real decentralization is not only how many nodes you have and where they are. Decentralization means a lot of things. Governance is one of those things. Decentralization is a process. You get there at some point when there is enough growth. So usually projects become fully decentralized, if they really want to become fully decentralized, in 2-3 years.
I think I read in your white paper there was going to be 55 nodes, and then 5 will go to partners.
So that's the first step and has been reached. Right now, to go fully decentralized, we need to have the governance application, which allows people to vote. We needed to have Chainman, which is the software, the dashboard to manage multiple nodes. So that people that decide to be node operators have an application to monitor them. And then we needed the software updates for all the nodes, whatever they are, whatever operating system and version of the software they have. So that's pretty much where we stand. We are completing right now the software updating infrastructure, which is 99% done. We are literally debugging that infrastructure. And then we should be releasing also Chainman very soon.
That's great news. Great to hear that. And, most people listening to this right now probably are pretty well informed about DeSci and blockchain and healthcare. But there is this need to educate the rest of the population, let's say, and especially in healthcare, I think there's a lack of understanding around this. So my question to you, as a researcher, having been in academia for some time, and then also as a practitioner, what role does education play in really driving healthcare innovation here?
So, like I said before, the difference is in the trust, in where the trust is. So COVID has created this erosion in trust. So this is not only in healthcare, but also in science in general. How can we work from now on if we don't want to have that trust? Because right now we are full of conspiracy theories. We can use better tools. In particular, in healthcare, the most compelling story is connected to the data and the validity of the data. I can mention 3 different examples of what could be a gain if the data was auditable. Right now, data is not auditable. If you get the data from a hospital, you have to trust the hospital. It's again based on trust. So I go to the hospital, they do something wrong to me, even if there is insurance, well, they are still not happy to have a loss in reputation from the institution, the physician. So let's say that there is still a little temptation in hiding or trying to hide, change the data because they own the data, they own the log. So technically, they can do whatever they want. So certifying the data with a certificate that is created all the time you update that record and stored on chain, you can ensure that any change you make on the data is tracked. So if you want to change that data, it's going to be there. That makes life for a patient more secure, safer. So would you pay $5 more per year to have a certified record? My answer is yes. Drugs or vaccines. They go out, they do a clinical study, someone gets hurt, they want to start an investigation. By the time they start the investigation, they've been manipulating all the data of the clinical study. because there is a time from when people get hurt, they already know what is coming. Okay. How can I make sure that data cannot change? Same thing. And then lastly, AI. Data, now the healthcare data that you want to use for the AI, you better be sure that it is high quality data. If it's not, you're going to have a bad AI output. So if you certify clinical data, you can only just gain.
No, you're absolutely right. A lot of companies, hospitals, healthcare institutions are looking at AI technology now and trying to figure out how to use it appropriately. But some of these data sets are really poisonous data sets. If you do add them into the AI system, it's going to skew the results of the entire model potentially. So there really needs to be this system of auditing or some sort of tracking system to make sure that when the data is generated, the same data that you see later on matches up with the original data set. So I think that's something a lot of health institutions are looking at, but they're not sure how to solve. It's a tough problem. And that's why I think blockchain is so important here.
So let's say this. The ICH has issued guidelines on the quality of the data, which requires by the end of 2025 that every record has to be certified. The blockchain is a solution to this. And it's not about just what does it mean a bad record, a bad batch of data. So data can be falsified. There are literally companies that can create data out of the blue. They use an AI and they can literally generate data.
Exactly.
They can patch data. They can take old data, re-timestamp the data. So there is a lot of stuff that can be going on this, So training an AI model is a very expensive operation. You spend multiple $1 million to rent the GPUs, multiple millions of dollars to buy the data. So you better be sure that whatever you buy is demonstrable to be high quality. And how can you demonstrate this high quality? Because you have now the certainty of when the record was created, all the different tests and updates. So it's not because it's the institution telling you, it's because the institution is giving you access to an auditing trail, decentralized. That's how you address the problem.
Yeah, and I think as we start to do this, it'll be really amazing. I think it's really a matter of just getting it done.
We are currently working with governments, we are working with institutions, and we are also working with small companies. And
let's talk about some of the projects that the partners that you have now. So what has been their feedback from beta testing?
One project that I'm really in love is a DeepIn project, is a decentralized infrastructure, which is running data AlphaFold, which is an AI software to study the folding of proteins. Mm-hmm. And it's an Australian company. They have this decentralized network, and they're using Circular to certify each one of the proteins that they solve. There is another company that is creating products from cannabis. They're using Circular for all the data that they're generating to certify that data. We have 8,000 pharmacies in Italy that are connected to our network, and they are currently certifying the patient records. They can guarantee the traceability of any change on that data, which also increases the price for that data when they sell. Again, we have a partnership with Arculus and CompoSecure to create a new standard of digital signature using a card with encryption for decentralized data integrity solutions. There is really a lot of different use cases. Right now, I would say since January, we probably onboarded more than 30 projects.
That's incredible. I'm sure you have documentation for developers to build on your system. How easy is it for a developer to get onboarded?
We have two types of API. We have the standard API, which is the crypto API, like all the other blockchains, so which require wallets and all that part. And then we have enterprise APIs, which is literally 20 lines of code and you are done. And it is, enterprise-friendly API, which in multiple languages, and where you literally have nothing to do with the token. So that problem disappears completely.
Interesting. You're basically abstracting away all the token portion of it.
It works like a cloud at that point.
What are your views around data privacy and ownership? We talked a little bit about ownership before, but right now there's a lot of concerns. You could think of the example of 23andMe with people's genetic information. What's your perspective on this?
It's terrible. So again, you have no ownership of the data. I used 23andMe, so one of the
Same.
records is mine. The idea that they can dispose of that record and today they don't even know where it's going to go. So eventually we are heading toward a decentralized record, which I think is the real way to work. So what does it mean, a decentralized record? It doesn't mean that you're going to have your own record, because where are you going to store your record? In your wallet, in your cell phone, in your computer? And what if you lose it? So no, there will still be centralized providers, but the governance of that record is going to be decentralized. They will just rent you the space, essentially. They will have no control on the data inside that space. You will just pay for the space. And there will be more than one. Doesn't matter which one you use, will be completely transparent. And that will allow the growth of a new type of market where whoever wants that kind of data can approach you and offer you to sell them that data.
Creating a marketplace for research potentially as well.
Yeah, I mean, you are not going to actively participate. You probably are going to marry one service. There will be multiple services. They say, hey, we can sell your data and offer you this much return for your data. So you will marry one. Decentralization is amazing. But again, you need to be reasonable. Decentralization alone doesn't address all problems. There is still need a certain degree of centralization and competitiveness on the market. Otherwise, no one is going to go sell your data.
Yeah, I get that. But I also see a potential future where maybe researchers might want to directly engage with an individual or a group of people because they need something more than the existing data. So they want to ask this individual or group of people, hey, would you be interested in participating in this clinical trial?
But
Based
they do
on
that already. They do
right,
that
but how do they
already.
find them? It's such a challenge to find the correct clinical trial candidate as we
Well,
speak.
there are many ways, and sometimes the institutions, they help you. There are agency for that. Essentially there are posts and people read that. So there is no bias in that. The problem is not engaging the person. The problem is, what do I do with the data after the data is there? How do I find that data when I need? Because right now we have a single place where you have your silos and you have your search. Later, you will not have a silos, you will have multiple services to give you access to that data. But that data, you will have the certainty that is real, the certainty that there is a person behind. You will have all this information. Now, we will see exactly where we are going, how it's going to play out. It's very early right now.
A lot of this is, you have partners and you're working on this, but rolling it out mass scale is still a challenge for you and for all companies, I would say.
It's already a big change if the centralization that is already in place right now would return part of the earnings to the owners, to the patients. Like so far, hospitals sell the data and nobody get paid, just the hospital. Would be already a big win if people start earning something.
For sure. So what are some things that is actually stopping adoption today for this blockchain in healthcare? What's holding back some of the implementations? And I'm sure, you've had conversations with folks. What are some of the pushback that you're hearing?
The first thing that they think when you say the word blockchain is crypto. And crypto doesn't have a very good reputation. So the best way is to say, look, this is a compliant system. So it's based on a study of compliance. You don't have to look at crypto. You don't have to do anything with crypto. So the crypto introduces uncertainty because I have to buy an asset. What if this asset has a problem? Blah, blah, blah. So that creates an issue. Enterprises don't want to deal with those issues. They are too busy and they talk about compliance all day long because that's what they do for a job. They have to comply with a lot of regulations. So that's what they know. And if you want to succeed with enterprises, you need to speak their language. That's why a small company like Circular in 3 months made more than 30 contracts with enterprises and institutions because of this.
Yeah, I hope that continues to grow as well. I have a few questions left. I appreciate your time, Gianluca. This has been really a great conversation. Share a little bit about your protocol roadmap. What do you have in store for the next few months, maybe for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so right now we are growing the enterprise part. So again, Circular is too vertical. From one side, you have the crypto, and it's inevitable because you have a network that needs to be paid by its own native token. That part needs to grow, and we are looking at the DEX, a Launchpad, and an NFT marketplace. We are also looking at the opposite side, some products in the enterprise part. The infrastructure is already live. There is a portal where you can buy transactions, where you can do all the different things. So we need to consolidate these. And right now we're really after more funding and more enterprises to onboard.
What would be like your ideal enterprise to work with?
Right now, we are mostly focused on institutions connected to the government. And it is for a very good reason, because aside doing very, very impactful things with them, right now, something that is emerging, and it's not US, it's everywhere, is that there is a lot of confusion about what new technologies can offer. And they really appreciate, and they are very receptive in exploring new venues that until yesterday were completely unthinkable. And I have to say that the idea of a trustless model is becoming more and more appealing, because literally simplifies life for all the stakeholders.
That's music to my ears. And like you said in the beginning of the podcast, your mission is really to make the most impact in this space, and working with institutions and governments that can make a really huge impact. So that'll immediately show some impact, hopefully, right? So I have a few more fun questions. What book has shaped your thinking the most, or like most influential book that you've read?
Related to...
In general, to
in
your
general?
life, to whatever you want.
I'd say Stephen Hawking.
Which one?
Stephen Hawking,
Stephen Hawking.
about the...
Oh, Stephen Hawking. Okay,
Stephen
got you.
Hawking. Sorry, I'm Italian.
No problem.
I have that defect that I...
Stephen Hawking, physics.
I don't remember now. It's the one about black holes.
Yeah.
The history of black holes. I can't remember now the exact title also, because it's a book read long
It
time
was
ago.
like
But it was
brief
very
history in
intriguing
time or
to
something.
me. It was very intriguing. I was in college when I was reading that book, and it was very inspiring to see how he was a student, and he was really trying to rush into discovery, into understanding. And he was a terrible student. For what he was explaining, he was studying very little, and his interest was completely outside of what he needed to do to perform and get good grades. That's been a lot similar to what has been my life as a student, where I've been studying, but I was working and doing research. My bedroom was like a lab. So that has been shaping a lot who I am. I read that book in Italian, actually. I was in Italy at that time. But it was very impactful, because it was about his life, about was his passion, how he got on studying on black holes. Again, it was about the ambition to contribute in his domain and to really try to grow into that. That's why I think it was one of the books I enjoyed. I don't even know the name of the book in English, to be honest.
I appreciate that. So, Brief History in Time, that's the book.
Yeah, right now I'm reading a book from Jim Keyes. He's the former CEO of 7-Eleven and Blockbuster, and he's also going to be joining Circular.
Oh, wow. Yeah, actually, you guys did a podcast with him on Around
Yes,
the Corner.
I met him in
Around the
Dubai.
block.
Oh my God, this guy is phenomenal. And he's a gold mine in experience. He's now very focused on education and what can be done to improve the current paradigm for education. We have a lot of points in common in the way we see education, because one thing that has been affecting my life was the fact that I've never been really comfortable. I always been in a situation where I didn't have enough money, or I needed to do this, or I needed to do that. It was always a problem. And my understanding and my belief is that if you are too comfortable in your life, you're never going to move forward. It's a bit of discomfort that is really putting on your shoulder the pressure to change things for the better.
Well said. Totally agree there. And I think that's something hopefully the audience can resonate with as well. But speaking of your Italian background, I need to ask you, what's your favorite Italian food?
I don't have favorite things. So that's a very common question for me. What's your favorite? I don't have favorite colors. I don't have favorite music. I don't have favorite food. Your favorite things should be changing over time. Why do you need to have that commitment?
I love that. Fair. It's true. And when people commit to that so early on and they feel like they need to stick to that, I love lasagna. 10 years later, do you still love lasagna? Maybe, but you've probably had better food since then,
I like
potentially.
it. I like to eat. I like food.
Same,
That's
same.
enough.
I was actually in Italy last year, Italia. I went to Florence and Milan and Cinque Terre. It was great. We didn't eat that much pizza, to be honest.
So, I try to be very practical and I try to put energy where it's needed. And I am absolutely superficial, tremendously superficial on other things. Again, you can't do everything with the same attention span. And I like to eat well. I like good
Same,
food. I like to eat healthy food.
same. I would say the same. It's hard for me to pick a favorite. Moving on to a more, let's say, philosophical question, perhaps.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on the singularity, like the AI singularity? Ray Kurzweil talks about this, that by 2045, we're going to essentially merge with machines in some way. What are your thoughts on that?
We need to agree on what the singularity is, because someone says that the singularity is the emergence of consciousness and someone else says that is us merging with AI. So let's talk about consciousness. So I am an expert in simulation. No? I think that was pretty clear. And I learned that anything that can be described can be simulated, can be more or less efficient. But if you know the rules and the math, you can simulate anything, which means that you can simulate consciousness. Unless you want to be very spiritual and tell me that there is some component that is not a purely physical component, maybe, but
Maybe.
I think we have a lot of hardware to be able to generate the behaviors that we have. I think that we are very close. And there is a couple of things. So consciousness, it doesn't have to be necessarily like our consciousness. That's the thing. And actually, if I had to pick, I would say that would be better not to be like our consciousness. I will probably try to build a system that is conscious, but that might filter out some of the flaws of people, if you want to exploit that consciousness for something good. If we need instead to have an empathic consciousness, well, I don't know. That may take a little bit longer. About merging instead with the AI, I don't know. But my feeling is that the AI robotics is kind of the evolution of our species. Like, I don't know if you're going to be able to merge with them, but I'm kind of sure that they're going to be after us.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, we're already outsourcing a lot of our memory to machines. Our phones hold a lot of our memories. Now, ChatGPT and other AIs are using their memories to build their models. So there's already this sort of, I don't want to call it emergence, but connection with the machine. So
And it's getting closer and closer every day. But think
super
about
fast, yeah.
whatever is on a big data center today is going to be on a chip tomorrow. When you have that, you start getting very powerful.
Quantum computers and things.
I'm not that worried about the quantum computer. They're very powerful, but they can do very limited amount of things, and they really have to work together with a different system to be very powerful. Today they look scary because of the financial world and encryption, but anyway, I think we will get there. One thing that Elon Musk said that I kind of liked when he said, it seems like that we are, just the booting sequence for a new species.
Maybe.
Which means that if there are aliens, most likely they're going to be machines, because there is, someone biological that is created and then, boom, disappear, and machines. I think the more machines evolve, the more they will start to look like us. They will start working like us, because machines as they are today, even if they can become very smart, they will have a lot of limitations that our bodies, our human beings don't have. They will have other powers that we don't have as well. And I think the maximum evolution will be somehow in the middle.
Yeah, no, I recently saw a company, they had a robot that they built. They included hundreds of fibers to mimic muscle fibers in the human
That's
body.
a pneumatic system.
Yeah, I think that's incredible.
It just looks creepy.
It's very Westworld kind of feeling, but it's
Yeah,
not
the
stopping.
problem, it doesn't fix itself. If it breaks, it breaks. If you take a chip, you go in the Allen belt, it's most likely not even going to work. So again, you want to make sure the best of the two worlds will merge somewhere in the middle. That doesn't mean that we will merge with AI and technology, but I think the best solution will come using the best of both worlds. And it's going to come very fast, in my opinion.
The future's coming fast, everybody. Gianluca De Novi, thank you so much for your time today. What's the best way for people to reach you and your team?
Just go through my website or the LinkedIn, social media. I tend to answer to people.
Great.
Should be pretty easy to get in touch.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to put those links in the show notes for everybody. We hope today's conversation inspired you to think critically about the future of health innovation and the role we can all play in building systems that prioritize trust, transparency, and efficiency. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review to help us reach more listeners passionate about revolutionizing healthcare. Until next time, stay healthy, stay innovative, and keep your mind and ideas unchained. Thank you so much, Gianluca. Hey everyone, we would greatly appreciate it if you can take a moment to share your thoughts about the show by writing a review and rating the show on your podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach a wider audience and enhance the overall quality of the show. Don't forget to encourage your friends, mentors, teams, and students to tune in and subscribe as well. Thank you for your support. Check out healthunchained.org and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you enjoy podcasts. Join the premium Health Unchained Supercast community by going to healthunchained.supercast.com, which gets you access to ad-free episodes, and join the official Telegram community group for the latest updates.